Like most people, you probably find yourself worrying about time, and as you get older, it's only getting worse. You're annoyed at how much time you waste, whilst at the same time you can't make up your mind on what to do in the future. And on top of that, we're living in an age with an incredible amount of choice. And I'm not just talking about products, I'm talking about your education, your career, and even where it is that you'd like to live. And what really scares you is waking up one day and realizing you missed your chance. So essentially, I've been a total geek about this whole subject recently, and I'm going to be breaking down the most important lessons that I've come across in a way to try and come up with a plan for you and for me to make the most of our lives and to not waste them. Sound good? Cool. So let's start with a small observation. Lately, I've been noticing a particular type of video pop up on my Instagram feed. It's basically just a meme all about getting off of Instagram and to stop wasting your life. And what a funny place to find these videos, on the app where we're wasting the most time. I can't help but find it funny that the person that's making these videos is no doubt spending a lot of time on there. But hey, I guess it's all for a greater cause. It's an interesting concept, and I definitely didn't see these videos a few years ago, which has kind of made me think maybe people are finally realizing just how much time they're really wasting. So this next thing is called post-content clarity. So pull up your YouTube, go on your history and have a browse. And I'll be interested to hear the percentage of the content that you either regret watching or you kind of just didn't really enjoy. Now apply that same process to Instagram Reels or TikTok, and I would take a guess that 90% or more of the content that you've watched, you're not particularly really bothered about. Kind of makes you think. It's so weird the fact that we're all consuming this content, and yet we ourselves don't even really rate it. But maybe it's not actually all down to our phones. Maybe it's you. Now, it's really easy just to criticize social media and our phones for stealing our attention from what we really care about and what we have to focus on. But even if you remove them completely, you'd still have a problem. Let me explain why. We naturally feel an inner urge to distract ourselves from the things that we really care about. That could be a business idea, an essay, creative project, or a difficult conversation with a spouse. We actually want to distract ourselves and do something less important instead. Initially, this just seems like a strange idea, doesn't it? Like, why would we actively spend an hour doing something that we don't like when you know that you could just spend that time doing something meaningful? And the real reason is because it's uncomfortable to be faced with our human limitations. The moment that you choose to focus on something that really matters to you is when you find out your own capabilities. You suddenly have to accept the fact that you might not have the skills needed to start that business or to edit that video, and the fact that the difficult conversation with your spouse might actually shake things up a bit. So basically what I'm saying is that when you do stuff that matters, it will lead to discomfort and confronting your limited control, which is quite scary. So naturally we just opt to go online instead, where we're the ones in charge and we can hide away from all the uncomfortable situations. And because you now know this, we can take a little bit of blame away from our devices and realize that even if they weren't there, we'd find ways to avoid doing what really matters. I'm sure that you can relate with me here. You've got something that you need to work on, an essay or a creative project maybe, but instead of getting started, you find yourself cleaning the room or your desk. And actually, maybe the plants need watering as well. Better do that first, right? Your mind starts being sneaky and suddenly you're trying to avoid doing all the important things. For example, I've owned this keyboard for about 4 years now. Do I know how to play it? No. How many hours collectively have I added up? I would say probably no more than 5. Would it make me happy and proud, and would I have fun if I did know how to play it? Yeah, I think so, but the truth is, it would be a very uncomfortable process. Coming to terms with the fact that I can't read music, I don't know what the notes mean, my hands don't operate in the way that they need to in order to play it. Yeah, it would just be a very uncomfortable process. So instead, my mind tells me, hey, maybe another time. You could always just play a little bit of Xbox. And there we go, down that path once again. The good news, however, you now know this, and hopefully you can spot this pattern when it pops up. I think the key thing here is to acknowledge that all the important and hard things in life will feel uncomfortable, but not letting that be the determining factor whether you actually go and do it or not. And also being able to find motivation in that uncomfortable feeling, because when you feel it, that's also a signal that you're growing. And it is really easy to forget, but nobody's ever built a successful business or learned the guitar or crafted the body of a Greek god without getting out of the comfort zone. Okay, that's enough about wasting time. What about your time and how you should exactly be spending it? So this is the part where I could do some maths on things like life expectancy, phone use and sleep, and come up with some scary statistics all about how little time you've got left. But I imagine you've already seen stuff like that before, so yeah, let's not make it scary, let's not bring on an existential crisis, let's try and keep it positive. So going back to what I said earlier about choice and the fact that for many of us we have a lot of it, almost too much, it begs the question, how do you make the call on those choices? Some will be risky and some not so much. Which brings me to a really good concept called reversible versus irreversible decisions. So basically this just is what it says on the tin, but it's not really something that we tend to comprehend too often. I'm the type of person who could easily spend 5 minutes looking at drinks in a shop, wondering which one I want to buy. Honestly, I look at like a smoothie and I get excited about that and I'm like, oh, that'd be nice, but what about a Red Bull? Oh, maybe I've already had too much caffeine though, so water. And then I look at the water, I'm like, oh, it's a bit boring, so maybe I'll go back to the start and look at the smoothie. Yeah, honestly, I am that kind of guy. So from that, you can gather that decisive decision making is not my forte. In the past, I've actually had tabs open on my computer for flights that I actually do really need to book, only to leave it a week, refresh the page, and then end up paying double the price. Honestly, I annoy myself sometimes. However, since learning about the really simple concept of reversible and irreversible decisions, I would definitely say I'm in a better place than I ever have been. And as someone who is naturally quite risk adverse, whether that be financially or with my life choices, it is really important for me to push quite hard in order to change that. So let's do an example. So let's say taking a trip to another country or even moving to another country. Can you just come back if you don't like it? Probably. Yes, you might lose some money, but can you earn more in the future? Yeah, even something like buying a new camera. Can you just return it or sell it if it's not for you? Yeah, of course you can. So for me, these are the kind of things that I can easily spend days and weeks mulling over, but the annoying thing about that is that it gives you like a sense of mental fatigue, and on top of that, the longer you waste thinking about these things, you can actually miss opportunities. Out of everything I've mentioned so far, this is probably the hardest one for me, but I do really like the concept. For me, it kind of clears things up and enables me to just push on and keep on progressing. Oh, and one last thing about decision making. What would the future version of you want you to do right now? What I really like about that question is that it takes the attention away from what's convenient and redirects it to what is meaningful. So you probably often hear people ask you things like, where do you see yourself in 10 years or maybe 5 years? It is pretty common, but I honestly think that working in such long time frames is a bad idea. So much changes in that time, it's going to be impossible to guess. And to have goals that span that length of time are going to be incredibly difficult to keep on top of. And instead, I just prefer to set goals either yearly or in seasons. I think people often underestimate what you can achieve in 1 year and even 3 months. Like a 5-year goal just to get fit is way too much time, it's really vague, and it's going to be so easy to just put it off for another time or even another year. However, a 90-day goal to run your first 5K or to do a new personal best on your squat is not only doable, but it really helps to build momentum. So I love this concept, and it's called memory dividends. And the aim of the game here is to basically stack together fun experiences when you're young versus waiting until you're older. So you might be thinking, why? Why not just wait until retirement or when you've got a bit more money saved? Well, there are some issues in that way of thinking. So number one, and I'm sure we've all found out the hard way, whether it's family or friends, but unfortunately, not everybody makes it that far. And number two, if you are lucky enough to get into your older years, who's to say that you won't have some kind of illness or injury? And generally, I doubt you're going to have the energy that you do when you're younger. And number three, of course, as you age, you will gain more responsibilities, whether that is in the form of a partner, a child, a mortgage. All these things are going to make it so much harder to take risks like traveling and starting a business. And the good thing about doing big and exciting stuff when you're young is that you get more time to look back on it fondly. I personally always think how I'd love to be that old guy with some really great stories to tell. It just seems like it'd be such a shame to feel panicked and rushed in my old age trying to chase down some dreams that I kept putting off. So if you think about the best stories from the most extraordinary people, the stuff that ends up in books or on their funeral speech, it's never the normal and rational behaviour that gets mentioned. It's filled with stories that made that individual unique, the times that they broke away from the norm and did something a little bit out there. So what I'm saying is that if you want to create the kind of life where you have some really cool stories to tell and for others to tell cool stories about you, you're probably going to have to pay the price for appearing weird in the present moment. Okay, so I know that is a lot of different concepts, ideas and mindsets to remember, but I do genuinely think that if you can understand these and keep them in the back of your mind, I think it is going to be really useful and quite motivating as well. It's important to understand as well that we are creatures of comfort and we will actively always seek out ways to avoid doing difficult things. The crucial thing is here, don't beat yourself up about it. We all have that same problem. What you can do though is notice it and find motivation in the outcomes that can be achieved from getting out of that comfort. And I understand it probably seems quite vague when I say things like do cool things or go on an adventure, but honestly, so many people online are looking for specific things and answers, but it really does depend on you and where you are in life. The adventure for you might be finally starting that YouTube channel, it could be starting a dog grooming business, or even backpacking around Australia. My main point is that you could do all of those things, fail at all of them, and it's probably still a better use of time than not bothering at all. I hope that you found some value in this video. If you did, then it would mean the world to me if you considered subscribing to the channel. I'll see you next time. Cheers.